Welcome to the November 28th, 2023 session of Tangerine SDR and Hamside Technical Session. My name is Dave, KV0S, and this week I have been keeping up on keeping my radio up to date and such. Not a lot of new projects radio-wise. I had one computer die a while back, and I did some forensics on it. But a couple, not one of my main line computers, but anyway. So that we're working on getting everything together for the mini DCC. So it's coming up. People are making recordings, me included. So that's about it. Next on the list is Nathaniel, W2NAF. Go ahead, Nathaniel.
Thanks, Dave. Good evening to the group here. I've continued being quite busy. Probably the most relevant thing to this project is I've been working on writing and filing annual reports for the NSF grants. So I got the annual report for the GRAPE grant, the Scranton side, that was submitted last week, and that was approved by the NSF officer, and I got nice comments back from that, so she seemed to like it. I am asking for a no-cost extension on the original Tangerine/Clementine grant, and we are going to be diverting or using most of those funds to help deploy the GRAPE 2s. So after talking with Dave Whitten and Dave Larson and John Gibbons and a number of other people, it seemed to make the most sense to finish this particular grant off by putting those resources towards getting the GRAPE 2 network out and deployed. We want to still see the Clementine come to fruition, or the Tangerine, or one of these. I certainly hope it does. I can also say that if I have a proposal in right now to do SDR work down in Antarctica in the future. If that got funded, and the grapes or the tangerines or the clementines are available, we might be able to put some of those down in Antarctica, which would be neat. So I still hope there's a future for that. But that's what I'm working on right now with those reports. They have to get Bill Engelke in Alabama. They're also doing a no-cost extension for their part of the grant, and that covers the operation of the database. Phil Karn asked in the chat, where in Antarctica? Well, according to the proposal, we'd put receivers down at South Pole Station, McMurdo, and at Palmer. So that's what we wrote. There's they're redoing a lot of the stations, or like renovating the stations down in Antarctica. So things are a little bit in flux down there. So I'm not sure how all of that's going to pan out, but that's what we proposed. Let's see. So a couple other things. Message for Dave Whitten. I spoke with John Gibbons this evening, and he's interested in having you, asking you if you would modify your magnetometer code to work with the GRAPE 2.
Yeah, and I actually proposed to him that I would be happy to customize it for him.
He'd like to take you up on your offer.
Okay. Well, he told me about something, and I was just putting together a reply to his email, but he didn't say what it is he wanted me to do. Yeah. So he said something about having a shortage of C programmers.
Yeah. So he wasn't sure before I talked to him. He was less sure about what he wanted you to do. But after I spoke with him, it became more clear.
Okay. So, well, the clouds dissipate.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's lots that could be. There's lots of loose ends there, and it could be. It was always meant to be customized for.
Yeah. And I think this is really good, because in the original personal space weather station grant, one of the things we said was we were going to develop a a single device that would have like modular instruments on it. And so getting that integration going would really, help address that. And yeah, I think that's really good. So thank you very much. And Michael Howen.
If I could, just a moment. Dave, could you mute? You've got something chattering in the background.
Me?
Yeah.
Dave, me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah.
I think it sounds like a fan clicking or something.
Just a minute.
Yeah. Michael Howen, maybe when we get to the open discussion, I'd like to hear about your efforts with the grapeless grape again, because I know you were looking at doing that for the digital RF, possibly the full spectrum. I was wondering how that was coming, because I know some people are interested in like using flex radios as for doing Doppler shifts, and be really nice to kind of get that make that available. So maybe during the open session, we can do that. And final announcement for me, it's very likely I'll be off Telecon for the next 2 weeks. Next week, I'm going to Boulder, Colorado for the CDR Science Steering Committee. So CDR is the group that the NSF division that funds things, including the Personal Space Weather Station project and the GREAT project. So I'm on their steering committee meeting now. So I leave on Monday for a week in Boulder, Colorado to be on that committee. And then the week after that, I'll be visiting, I'll be over in San Francisco. So I think I'll get to see Rob Bennett in person at the American Geophysical Union meeting. So very excited about that as well. So good chance I'll be off the telecons for those 2 weeks, and then hopefully be back that Monday, and then we'll be off for Christmas and New Year's, I guess. So, all right, back to net.
Okay. Let's see. Next on the list is Jim, K4BSE. Go ahead, Jim.
Good evening, all. Not a whole lot to report here. Still haven't had a lot of time for ham projects, continuing to follow the ray experiments on the ham side. That seems to be running fairly well now, except I got to figure out how to update the operating system on the Ubuntu. But otherwise seems to be going okay, and been off doing other things. Back to net, K4BSE.
Okay. Next on the list is Phil, KA9Q. Go ahead, Phil.
I wish you did things to alphabetical order or something, so I knew when to unmute my microphone.
Well, I use the participants list, and when you make your mic active, you move to the top of the list.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I did. Anyway, not a whole lot to report here. Minor little tweaks to K9Q radio. One problem I keep running into, and I keep finding these little things as I use it, since I actually transmitted HF for the first time last night in I don't know how many years. What happens when you suddenly overload the front end of K9Q radio? Interesting. Actually, it does work well. You see what you expect to see, and the overrange counts start going up very rapidly, as I expect. But another little problem happens is all the noise estimates get upset, and because I have very long smoothers on them, it takes a long time for them to go back to normal after I go back to receive. So I'm trying to think of little hacks to fix that. One thing I did is, well, if the A to D is an overload, just clamp the N0 estimate, don't let it change. Well, that works great until you are actually listening to the frequency that you're transmitting on, because there's this loud burst of noise even before the transmitter puts out any significant power that causes the noise estimate to go way up. So, little things like this. And I hate having to think up little hack solutions. I'm always trying to find a more elegant solution to something. Unfortunately, it often takes a long time. So let's see. Other than that, I guess Rob can talk more about how widely this is being used. He says it's going into most of the bigger Whisper daemon sites, which is nice to hear. And let's see, that's about it. I guess I got to get on the ball and start writing my presentation for the mini DCC. Yep. Is it again?
December 9th, Saturday.
December 9th. Yeah, that's coming up soon, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay,
And
well, that's on my calendar.
John sent out a uh, reminder, John Ackerman.
I saw that.
Yes. So
Yeah, he's the
and
one who's always bugging us every year for our submissions,
yeah,
isn't he?
I'm
Yeah.
letting him do it so I don't have to.
Yeah, I know. I was a program chairman once a long time ago. I never wanted to do it again because
Yeah.
it mainly involved bugging people to get their papers in on time.
Yeah.
So,
So
but it didn't cure me of the bad habit from being on the other side. So,
yes. Well, okay. You're done with your report, right?
yeah, I guess.
Okay. So next on the list is Robinette. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Well,
Up. You sound like you're in a box.
Mic is very low.
mic is very low.
Yeah, turn up your mic gain way up.
I don't know which mic it's chosen.
Just use the one in your computer if you got one.
It is set to
No,
You're picking up a different mic, I think.
yeah, is this any better? I'm trying to get my hello.
no.
No, we're gonna let you fix it and come back to you. Okay. Next on the list is Michael, AAK. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. Greetings to everyone listening. Back to you, Dave.
Okay. And next on the list is Bob, N5BRG. Go ahead, Bob.
Hello, everyone. I'm working away here, doing little things mostly. Still trying to get all the software straight so that it's recording data and uploading on a routine basis. I do see my files going up, but I haven't got the magnetometer side of the story worked out totally yet. So I'm trying to push those up occasionally. Anyway, they're being accumulated in case anybody ever wants to see them. So back to you, Dave.
Okay. And next on the list is, let's see, Dave, W, KD0, EAG. Go ahead, Dave. Mic muted. Yeah.
I hope it, whatever noises it was making have stopped. I don't know what you were hearing, except that I had the volume set kind of high here, because I have trouble hearing a few people like Bob and Tom usually. So I try to crank it up a bit, but I have been, well, I guess, I suppose, Nathaniel, that John Gibbon told you that I had sent him some mag boards today. Yeah, okay. So you spoke to him pretty late in the day. Yeah, I have some I'm satisfied with for now, and I can make them reliably and in quantity of ones that are better suited to his testing. I've been working on the Clementine somewhat, not as much as a few other things. The magnetometer documentation a good bit. What else? Well, nothing real earth-shattering. Also been getting some instrumentation so I can test things better. But that's it for me.
Okay. Another
Oh, I got
encouragement.
a Raspberry Pi 5 today, the first one.
Oh, great.
Yeah, they sent it like it was like in a brown paper wrapper. It was like they didn't want anybody to know what it was, so they wouldn't steal it, I suppose. But it was the most, anonymous box I've gotten in years. But that's what turned out to be in it. So
Well, it's computer porn or something, I guess.
A Raspberry Pi 5, you said?
Yes.
Wow.
So
What's it
Hey,
like?
can you try putting a RX 888 into it? I want to do a benchmark.
well, I'd love to, but I'm not really set up to even run my RX 888s right at the moment.
I think either Michael and I can help him.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, no antenna needed. Just plug it in. I want to see how fast it runs.
Okay. I expect it's going to be pretty close to some of the media tech chips or whoever they are. Some of the other.
I just want to know if it can handle an RX 888 in real time running at 60 some megahertz. That's what I want to know. Otherwise, I'm not all excited about this board.
Yeah, I just got one because they had one on offer.
so are you done?
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, Dave, your mic is still chattering. Must be some RFI or something.
To me, it sounds like a fan tapping.
No fans here.
Okay.
Weird.
How about me? You guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob.
Okay. I'm sorry for this. The reason for that is that I've been working on a number of things. One of the, I think, well, to start with, one of the developments is Clint KA70EI has been able to integrate the web SDR software package with a K7Q radio and a 888. So we have that running out at KPH. And amazingly, you can run all of that, including Whisper Demon, on a ThinkCenter i5 6500, which is not a particularly powerful platform. But we haven't publicized the availability of that website, but it seems to be working quite well. So I think that we've added, one more capability to the K9Q radio suite, another client, if you will, that is able to exploit the capabilities of Phil software.
Yeah, I've tried it. It's pretty cool.
The more I use that KPH, the more I realize what a wonderful receive site it is. It is truly quiet and sensitive. Clint has pretty well identified that it's like many good sites. This is a site that needs more gain ahead of the SDR. So the next time I go out, I'm going to add another 10 dB of gain. Phil, your newer features, the overload counting, and I don't think you actually in your code measure the wave file overload events, but I measure those in SOCs using SOC. Together, these have allowed me to adjust the RF VGA gain of the 888 and of course the demodulation gain from 32-bit to 16-bit PCM.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the midst of trying to calibrate a receive environment to calibrate not just the levels, but also the frequency accuracy. So here I have set up in behind me, I have two Beacon Blaster 6s and two QDXs, the QDXs, everything being GPS disciplined, phase locked. And I'm trying to confirm that we have a software environment and hardware environment that is both frequency accurate and repeatable and with a sufficient resolution. And actually, I'm having a lot of trouble doing that. I mean, everything is within a few hertz of each other, but we want to see that the spreading numbers, the frequency accuracy numbers, everything agrees. And at the moment, they don't. I can't get everything to agree. So I'm going through the process of setting up a test environment to test the end-to-end frequency accuracy and stability of both the receivers, the transmitters, and the receivers that we're using. And that, I think, is a requisite for us to be able to make meaningful recordings of Doppler shift and so on using the our devices. At the moment, I see no reason to think that any one device is at fault. I don't think I don't think it's clear to me. I'm learning. This is my first experiments. I'm trying to use FL Digi for the first time. to zoom in and look at the frequency drift of the transmitters. So there's a bunch of things, of tools, of software utilities that I'm learning to use for the first time that I've resisted for a long time. But I think that we have a good reason to believe that very soon we'll have a pretty calibrated environment out at KPH and elsewhere. All these sites. I think I mentioned. Well, I wasn't here last week, so I guess you didn't hear. Ryan Tolbin has produced a version of Whisper D, the decoding utility component of WSJTX. He has enhanced Whisper D so that it now outputs the spectral spreading information that is output by JT9 decoder for FT or W packets. So ultimately, my goal is to validate that both his code and JT9 output accurate frequencies and accurate spectral spreading numbers. And as part of that process, Ryan uncovered a problem in the JT9 decoder's reporting of spectral spreading, which Joe Taylor has acknowledged is a problem and will be corrected in upcoming versions, the releases of the WSJTX. So I think we're making a very small little contribution to a corner of WSJTX that's probably not very important to Joe Taylor, but is pretty important for those of us who are using JTX and Whisper to make measurements of the Doppler shift of the ionosphere. So those are my areas of focus in the last week. So I'll send it back to Annette and we can talk about it later if you want.
Okay, very good. Let's see. The next person to talk is Dave, N1HAC. Go ahead, David.
Hi, all. My big high-tech acquisition of the last week was a portable AM radio, because we've got noise problems up at Toolik, Alaska, and trying to figure out how to have them find the noise source. It comes and goes, and we haven't found anything that they can correlate it to. So I asked them, do they have an AM radio? And they said only in their trucks. So I found actually an AM plus shortwave radio on Amazon, which I'll send up there and they can go around and sniff it. Very effective ways of finding noise. And it turns out, we have interest in the AM broadcast band, that's AKR emissions from Aurora. And the shortwave on this one goes down to about 3 megahertz, which is where the auroras are. So hopefully they will be able to make use of this. And for $25, I don't have to build anything. So back to Net.
Okay, very good. Next on the list is Franco, K4VZ. Go ahead, Franco.
Good evening, Dave. Good evening, everyone. Given Thanksgiving holidays, I haven't done much the last 4 days, pretty much trying to digest the turkey. But a couple of things I was thinking. I watched, what's his name, Tom McDermott's video, and I was thinking perhaps a good improvement would be to be able in GR RTP to receive multiple SSRCs as multiple streams. And we can discuss it with Tom later. So a couple ideas. The second idea I had is that I failed to write the VHF part. If you want to add to KNQ radio ability to write, I can write some code and we can integrate it like we did with the SA 5351. So that's my couple of ideas for this week. Back to Net.
Okay. Next on the list is JWB8 SBI. Go ahead, Jay. Jay told me it didn't have much to say, so I don't know if that's sufficient. Okay, so we'll go on next to Jonathan Rizzo, KC3EEY. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hi, everybody. It's been pretty busy week, but not a lot of activity with VLF. Although I did get an email, there will be a SAQ transmission on Christmas Eve. So for those of you who might be interested in listening, I encourage you to do so. It's going to happen during the middle of the night here in the U.S., so it's always good to have a VLF SDR running and recording spectrum, and this way you could easily go back to it.
Yeah, it's like at 3 a.m. Christmas Eve.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm going to do some checks over the VLF system just to make sure everything's okay. And I'll just hope for the best. Hopefully there's much less or not a lot of noise preventing a good copy. I remember the last time there was actually quite a lot of noise, but that was back in the summer, and the noise floor seemed to have it seemed to have decreased and gone down, which is nice. I'm also still working on the 3-channel system and the H field receiver, the dual channel. That's all I have. Back to the net.
Okay. Next on the list, we have Dylan, KN6 IVW. Dylan, are you there?
Yes, I am. How am I coming in?
Just fine.
Okay. How have you guys been? I've been very busy, hence me not being on for a while.
Yeah.
So haven't really done anything with the case. If you guys are still in the heading in the same direction as before. I recently got a 3D print, new 3D printer that will be able to print higher resolution than the Ender Creality 5 that we have, and it will work a lot better with all the fine details, at least for the words and all of that, to print that up. So that would work out pretty well. And the other thing is I also have found a makerspace right here where I live. And if there is something that you like, if you do want to get a case made out of whether it's aluminum or whatever that is, I could possibly make that because they have a big milling machine there. And who knows, maybe it might be more expensive than what you guys can do, but I'd at least be able to reduce the costs for manufacturing it. So, and then I did have one question about the Dayton Hamvention. Who was the, I can't remember, but who was the person that was running the Tapper forum at the Hamvention?
I was involved in that. Probably I and John Ackerman.
So. Okay, so it was you. So I did have a question. So my, I guess you could call it a speech or presentation. I'm not quite sure.
Yes.
The points that I hit on that presentation, were those the points that you were looking for?
Well, yes, we wanted to see what you were doing in terms of making cases for amateur radio. That's what we were hoping you would talk about, and you did. So that was a good job.
I just thought about that afterwards. I was just like, I kind of wonder if I actually hit the points they were looking for. And I'm just like, I hope I did. So, okay. So those are at least the updates that I've found, and hopefully I'll be able to at least make it to the last 2 weeks of the year, and hopefully more after that. Just
Okay.
now that I got a job, it's very hard to
Yes.
keep up with this.
You look like you're in a grain bin.
Kind of. It's a Kwanzaa hut type thing.
Okay.
Garage that we have set up.
Okay.
Sadly, no real heating, but
I can see the code.
yes.
Well, very
All
good.
right.
Glad to have you back.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Michael Howen, AC0G. Go ahead, Michael.
Good evening, everybody. I just drove in from Cleveland this afternoon, visiting my son who's going to Case Western out there. My wife and my other son and I were on the trip. No problems. On the way, I spoke with Bob, who I sent 2 of my decrepit RX 888s to, and he gave me some descriptions of the work he'd done looking at them. One of the hopes is, or possibilities is that either we can replace a USB chip or figure out a way to reburn the bootloader. He's more expert at that than I, so maybe he can outline that. When I arrived home, I found that 2 new RX 888s that I'd ordered to replace those had arrived. In response to Nathaniel's question, it was an RX 888 that I was wanting to use, but I'll describe it later. I think to go over the way I've set up the possibility of using different radios and GPSDO to still gather the same data. One is an extant RAPE1 version 1, and another is using open HPSDR type radios. One's a Hermes, one's an Anon, one's a Metis, to capture digital RF. I've got a GNU radio block diagram that shows how I was doing that. Unfortunately, the GPSDO for the first eclipse went out. I'll have it up and running for the second eclipse. I'll show that a little bit later. Back to Nat.
Okay. Next, let's see, we've called on Phil, called on Rob. So we have Tom in 5EG, and I want to compliment Tom. He released a video this week and it was quite interesting. You did a really good job, Tom.
Well, thank you, Dave. Hopefully is the audio okay?
Yes, it is good.
Okay, very good. Yeah, there was a lot of fun putting that together. It's amazing how many mistakes you can make and how many takes it requires on some of the clips. But I got it all edited and put up yesterday. So I want to thank Franco and Phil for all their help. We went through a couple of issues in the last 2 weeks and it's all working great right now. So appreciate it very much. And Franco, yes, I think multiple SSRCs in one GRRTP would be a good thing. In that it would be nice to be able to log data from multiple channels at the same time or do things like that.
Yeah, we can talk here later. I have a couple of ideas.
Okay, back to the group.
I also think that something along these lines would be useful to imitate some of the things that Grapes were doing. So, and actually provide an additional data sites.
I totally agree with that. If we could make the KA9Q and the RX888 emulate a grape and get it compatible with Bill Engelke's database, that would be, I think, a huge win for me. And I think that would really kind of like, even though the Tangerine didn't really come out the way we had hoped, I think if we did that, it would just really help the final goals of the grant.
Right.
I'm ready to do that. I just all the Whisper Demon sites have the software. We have the IQ files. I just need somebody to guide me through the process of taking a WWV IQ file and creating whatever and doing the upload process. And I can add that to Whisper Daemon and run it at all the Whisper Daemon. There's at least a dozen sites that would be immediately. But I don't.
I think
reading his documents, Bill's documents, I didn't understand how to make that.
I think the person to talk to with that is going to be Bill Engelke. And Bill's going to be at AGU next week also. So maybe you and Bill can get together and have a lunch or dinner. Or
I wonder if we could, you guys interested in going out to KPH? I mean,
yes, I actually was going to ask you about that. I would be very interested in going out.
I could let me ask it would have to be a weekday, right? Because they're normally open on Saturday. So Saturday is the one day when it's manned.
Yeah, I'm going to be getting there on Sunday, and I'm going to be leaving on late Friday night.
Okay.
Like late Friday night.
But let me ask Richard, who runs who runs KPH. I'll ask him if he could make available. What would be a good weekday for a trip out there?
I have to look at my the talk schedule.
Yeah.
So I have to look at my AGU schedule to figure out when it is. But if you
schedule and suggest what would be an optimal day, it is, it's an hour and a half out and an hour and a half back. I'd be happy to provide transportation for, I don't know, five people who could fit in my car, and be happy to drive you guys out there and back and give a tour. But I think it would be very helpful to do so, because I don't think that the people at KPH appreciate the contributions that site has been making and in the future can make to our investigations.
Yes, I totally agree. Yeah, let me try to figure out while we're on the call here, I can look at my schedule and see if I can find what days look like I
Alternatively, I could take you guys down to KFS here in Half Moon Bay, but I could probably do that any day. But it isn't as, I think, it's not quite the same kind of historical value and interest.
So, Rob, Dylan asked what is KPH, and many of us know, but can you give a short summary?
Okay, KPH is a historical radio station. It was a maritime radio station. It's located about 30 air miles northwest of San Francisco. It was established out there it was established in the 1920s by Marconi and Dr. Beveridge. In fact, Dr. Beveridge selected this site as being the optimal site for communications to ships in the Pacific. The site is now no longer commercially active, but yes, thank you, Franco. That's a Radio Marine is the organization, the volunteer organization that mans the station. It is now owned by the Park Service. It was decommissioned in 1999. Of course, no need for shortwave communication with ships now that satellites are available. But it is operated and maintained by this volunteer group, the Maritime Radio Historical Society, and operates the site as a historical museum, a living history museum, analogous to the Jamestown museums on Virginia and so on. But of course, this is associated with the radio history. And this site was where the message was first arrived from Hawaii that Pearl Harbor had been bombed. But it has a long and important history in the radio communications environment. But right now, it is operated by volunteers. Each Saturday afternoon, there's a group of operators there. The receive site is separate from the transmit site. So the receive site is up in it's part of a national seashore. I'm not sure it's a park yet, called Point Reyes. It is very isolated from man-made noise, so it's extremely quiet. The antenna system is a commercial TCI 530. It's an omnidirectional uh, log periodic antenna. You can tune to it. There are Kiwi SDRs that are attached to that antenna that are available at kphsdr.com. If you go there, you'll reach the SDRs there. In addition, we have just in the last week added a web SDR, which is a second, more ham-friendly user interface, web SDR. These are all browser-based, both browser-based interfaces, of course, like the Kiwi. So that's a valuable site. I think it appears to be the quietest site for RF reception on the West Coast. It's quieter than KPH, which is similarly located right on the Pacific, on a bluff above the Pacific, but KPH suffers from cell phone towers being nearby and so on. So KPH is really an extraordinary site. It's kind of the Mauna Kea of the West Coast. Anyway, that's what it's about. kphsdr.com will take you there. You can listen to the site. Anyway, it has both Kiwis and now a RX 888 out there. Through our investigations and work out there, we've learned about the strengths and weaknesses of both the Kiwis and now of the 888. So it's a tremendous site. It's remote, which means it's 3 hours of driving most each way for me to get there. So I go there infrequently and never finish everything I want to do once I get there.
How do KFS and KPH compare, Rob? I confused them in the beginning.
Okay,
because they both have these great antennas.
Well, KFS is now 30 miles south of San Francisco, which is where I live. Like KPH, it's on the coast and was established as a commercial radio communication site. In the case of KFS, it's still in commercial operation. It has a set of 4 antennas. KPH really has only one antenna. It has a TCI 530, which is hardly historical from my standpoint. It was probably erected in the 80s. I wish they would allow me to put up some beverages there, if only to honor Dr. Beveridge, but I also think they'd work better than the TCI 530. But for various kinds of park politics and engineering politics, I haven't been able to do anything other than use what they have up at KPH. So KPH is the National Park Service historical site. KFS, south of San Francisco, is a commercial site. It is leased and operated by a division of Collins Radio, Aeronautical Radio. ARINC. They operate the site as a receive site for transmissions from airliners, commercial airliners, as they traverse the Pacific. I was surprised to learn that even in the age of satellites, that a lot of communications between airliners traveling out over the Pacific and air traffic control actually occurs over shortwave radio, not over satellite links. And the receive site for those communications, one of the receive sites, one for the West Coast, is KFS. So that is the primary purpose. It's in commercial operation and has, in addition to the same TCI 530 that is in use at KPH, KFS has 3 additional antennas, directional antennas, that are commercial log periodics, one of which is non-functional, almost non-functional, the northwest antenna. But the 2 others are extraordinary. I mean, the southwest and the southeast antennas are, 14, 18 dBi gain antennas, very low angle of radiation. These are 400-foot long wire log periodics. The antennas are described at the KPH KFSSDR.com site. You can go there, or KFSDR, I think is .com will get you to that site. So
How is the noise levels of those two sites compare?
the KPH is, I think, 3 or 4 dB quieter at KFS, and KFS suffers from RFI from the cell phone towers, which KPH does not. So if you can dodge the RFI, KFS is almost as good as KPH, and but if you can't, then KPH is, of course, quite a bit better than KFS. But I have Kiwi SDRs and RX 888s operating at both of these sites, and if you come out here, it's pretty easy for me. I live 5 miles from KFS, so it's easy, and it's a 45-minute drive from San Francisco to get down to KFS. It's an hour and a half to 2-hour drive to get from San Francisco out to KPH. KPH is pretty remote. KPH, well, like KFS, both are receive-only sites. There's no transmitters on the site. The transmissions for KPH, and KPH does do transmit. They have a transmit site that is about 10 air miles away in a community called Bolinas that is nearer to San Francisco. And that site is not open to the public, but that is actually a far more interesting site, I think, to those of us that are technically aware and interested. The KPH transmit site is, and if we were to do a tour, I would hope we could do both. That the transmit site is actually more interesting, I think, would be more interesting than the receive site. The receive
Did you
site,
get the KFS today and reset that 888?
I did not. I was kind of busy, and also the caretaker out there didn't respond to my email. I'm going to try again in the morning to see if I can run out there. There are actually 2 RX 888s out at KFS, so there is a second one. And if you want to do some work, Phil, I could give you access to the second. It's a different think center with a second RX 888, and it's GPS disciplined like the first.
Okay, I noticed it was down last night when I was transmitting FT8 and wanted to hear how I was coming in, and noticed that it had been down for about a day.
Well, you have access. You have access to KPH, right?
Yes, and I did get on KPH, and I was being heard just fine.
Yeah.
So, Rob, it looks like Wednesday is good for me. I don't have any presentations that I am scheduled to give or have people that I am associated with that I should be attending their presentations.
Okay. Well, what I would do then, Nathaniel, is I'll send an email to Richard Dillman, who is the head of leads the MRHS, the Marine Radio Society, and ask if it would be possible for him to give us a tour of the sites on that Wednesday.
Okay.
We'll see. And I explained to him that, in that email, and I'll CC you in that.
Great.
That communication, and you could chime in maybe your level of interest and why it would be valuable to you.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I'd really like to see it.
It is a unique site, and it's really and a trip out there on a Wednesday would give me the opportunity to make a few upgrades, which I want to do. So,
that'd be perfect. I like it.
You could see what you could see how to exploit and install and optimize the use of a 888, and of course that would be the Clementine SDR is, I think, the same situation.
I agree.
Because I think that we focus, to the extent that we focus on the receiver itself, the successful measurement of the Doppler shifts and ionospheric reflection, really requires a complete system, not just the receiver itself.
Mm-hmm.
And KPH is a good example of how the system has been optimized, the total system, receive system.
Yeah.
optimized for reception, and that includes of course the antenna, but also the filtering and the amplification and the ground isolation and all the components to make a system truly quiet.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Okay. Well,
yeah, a comment, Rob. The Kiwi SDR can decode the HF data aeronautical transmissions you're talking about. They're called HFDL, high frequency data link. It's not a very exciting name, but I've been playing with it, and yeah, it hears it fine. It's actually a pretty cool protocol, and I'm interested in decoding it with the with KNIQ radio because it gives you another set of HF propagation probes.
Well, it would be lovely. I think the capabilities of the Kiwi, all of the decoding and the extension it's sort of the true value of the Kiwi. It's not a piece of hardware.
But as far as I can tell, he's just been getting third-party packages that already exist and just plugging them in. I mean, I can do the same thing with the
yeah. Yes, well, you could, but you'd have to put together the user interface, and I know
that's right.
You like to,
Well, I mean, the thing I can do that he can't do is I can listen to all the channels at once.
What I was hoping is what I nudged John Siemens, the author of the Kiwi, nudged him to consider porting his software so that it talked to your library rather than try to talk directly to the.
I like his user interface. I like it better than WebSDR.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's a marvelous user interface, but it it only talks to his own hardware, and when I suggested to him that he consider porting his software onto this, is he did not see a way to monetize. I guess he gets some monetary rewards for the sales of the Kiwis, and he did not see how he could realize a similar kind of reward if he were just to offer his software as a pure software package. Now, I mean, Windows has figured out how to do it. I mean, a lot of people have figured out how to sell software, but I wasn't about to go into that kind of a debate with John Siemens, so I didn't take it any further.
Well, he can make a better RX 888, that's for sure.
Well, he's not doing that. He's not doing that.
Well, somebody's going to do it. If he doesn't, somebody's going to do it, right?
Well, this group is the group that's supposed to be doing
right,
it.
right.
Okay, so get to it, guys. We need a better 888. There are all kinds of unknowns and uncertainties associated with the 888. Not the least of which is our lack of a schematic. I got to take a break here. I'll give you a chance to somebody else to talk. Back.
I wanted to make some comments about your thing, Nathaniel, about getting what Tom McDermott has done to match the great. And I've done a lot of work with the stuff that Bill Engelke did, and I've got it running in a GNU radio flow graph and uploading data separate from what Bill did, although it's doing it essentially the same way. And my feeling is that Tom's demo there, where he was recording data using the MIT format, is essentially what Bill did. So he's extremely close already. And, I could feed Tom if, I didn't want to start sending out Bill's software to other people, but I could send him the stuff that I have. I know Bill has been pretty busy. I've sent him several emails, and either my email started going in his junk mail or he just hadn't had enough time to respond. But I could feed him over the stuff that Bill gave me and show him what I did. And I think that the difference too is that I think one of the hardest parts is just getting that MIT data recording stuff built and on the system and running. But what Bill did was he built those SD cards for all the Pis for people. So he suffered through all that and got it working and then just distributed it.
Right.
So getting something that could be built by other people is a little more difficult, and people will have trouble and need hand-holding to get all the different modules installed, but I think it could be done. But Tom's got it essentially with his second demo from what I saw. He just needs to Python stuff to put the header in on the file, to put the time, the date and the time, and then the stuff to do the restart the program every day and upload it. And he's got it.
You when you talk about toms, you want to capture the whole spectrum of the RX88 or just some like Whisper or something like that? Because a different storage requirement is not, I mean, very significant.
Yes, that's right. And that's one of the sensitive things I think that Bill has. You know, he's got you zipping up the files, and if you look through that web page, you'll see all of them are about the same size, and he's also doing particular channels. So like we're talking about doing it with the Whisper stuff, that's something that he'll have to talk about, and people using the data will need to think about is how to channelize all that information. And if you do the whole spectrum, you're talking about much larger chunks of data.
Right.
So I was going to comment that the filters just need to be changed in Tom's flow graph too, to make them match if you want the same sort of data structure. So all these different people's systems will correlate with each other better.
Yeah, well, that's easy to do with Phil's code. It's real easy to change the sample rate and the bandwidth, channel allocation.
Yes.
Tom, did you publish a video that I'm unaware of? Is there a link to it?
Yeah, I sent out an email to the Tangerine list yesterday.
Okay. I've been on the road, and so I have to go back and look at that.
Yeah, I watched that too, and that was very good. You know, if you think about all the work that went into that, you had to learn the software from the different folks and work out some bugs, learn it, and then you scripted it, then you did all the recording, and you edited it, and it just turned out perfect, I think. Plus, it's just a great educational tool for GNU Radio and everything else.
It helps that Tom taught GNU Radio Companion classes in the past.
Sure.
Well, I wonder if it's possible to share a screen here. I've never done this in Zoom.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Do I have to pick a desktop? I hit share screen and I got a whole bunch of options popping up
You
here.
have to pick up the screen.
Let me try that. Any of these things working?
Yeah, usually if you share the desktop, just make sure you don't have anything sensitive showing, but that works the best. You just share the whole desktop. So you click that and then click the green share button. This is like a two-step process.
All right, so I'm looking at, oh, there we go. Let's try this here. I don't know if that's working. Am I sharing anything at all? Probably not.
No. So you click the green share button on the bottom, then you click screen one or desktop one, and then you click the blue share button in the lower right-hand corner of that second dialog.
Later. Okay. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. It's going to make me stop Zoom, so I will lose contact with everybody. Anyway, what I had done, there's two. I have two solutions, and I'm sure Tom can point out the flaws in the second one. The first one was one I've had up and running for ages, which is a Raspberry Pi 400 with cubic SDR and FLDigi. And so instead of using the Grape One software that John Gibbons used, I used everything else in his Raspberry Pi image, but it compiled cubic SDR on that same radio, and cubic SDR is listening to a GSPDO stabilized RSPDX from SDR Play. And that produces the standard old grape data, which is FLDigi. spreadsheets. The second one was a GNU radio thing. So I used Tom's GNU radio block for the Hermes and simply defined a couple of different instances of that, one using an Anon radio that I picked up and a open HPSDR radio that I have, so that I could actually listen to every WWV station concurrently, and just piped it through to digital RF. The problem I had was that I had to leave town the day the eclipse happened, and of course there was a technical difficulty, and so it didn't record. But Tom had given me some advice before, as had you, Nathaniel, about the bandwidth I should use. The one piece of the chain that was missing was the data format to feed to Bill Engelke. And so between now and the eclipse in April, at least I'm hopeful that at least any radio that we can discipline that's in the open HPSDR category could capture data that's disciplined and feed it to digital RF, because GNU radio has everything you need. If we could get an interface to a RX888 and feed concurrent frequencies through the RX888, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think there are multiple ways to do this and get the same results. That's right. I was going to make some comments about what I saw on Michael's RX888s, the two that failed. I'd love to know if somebody that's got one that's working has measured the current that the thing is pulling with one of the little USB dongles that that interfaces so that you can measure voltage and current when it's running. What current did you see? But what I found was that it's got, I took it apart, and looked at it, and it's got a bunch of voltage regulators. It's got like 7 voltage regulators in it, and they're all putting out their voltage. Nothing's shorted and pulling anything down. I couldn't find any shorts on any of the pins or the packages. It's not reading, or neither one of them are reading or reporting when you do an LS USB. So they're not, the USB chip is not registering and coming back online when you plug it in. So I'm pretty sure that either the USB chip has failed or the bootloader code has failed, and it's not the booting up, because the USB interface is a CPU, and they're using that to collect data from the A to D and just pass it back. It's a real simple, I think probably a real simple, tight routine. And it's kind of like an FPGA. It loads code from a SPI memory chip. And we could have an issue there, but it looks like it's just not getting code. I noticed on the board it has a couple of extra pads, for one for transmit, one for receive, which are possibly an I2C interface, and talks in the data sheet about setting a couple of jumpers to determine how you're going to program the chip. And I notice you can pick up a software development kit board for about $35 that'll program it. So if it is the bootloader, and we could get a little more information on the details of the schematic, which is, I have the one that was posted by Franco, I guess back in July, but that was an earlier version of the RX888, and it doesn't exactly match the board, so it doesn't have the same things on it, but it's similar in structure, but it's not exactly the same. And I don't know if someone's come up with a more detailed schematic, reverse engineering it or not yet. But since that's a 11 by 11 ball grid array, it's hard to figure out where those pins are. If you want to, we'd have to do some x-rays or take a chip off. I found out we can get those USB chips for about $30. So it's conceivable that you could actually replace that chip if it's failed. But I think that's where the heat is in the part too. not in the A to D converter as much. So that's what I've seen.
Bob, I sent you a link over there where someone did some analysis on the current consumption of the RX-88. There's some interesting point there. I don't know if you saw it already or not.
Yeah, that's about
Send
what
it to
I'm
all of
looking
us,
for.
Franco?
Hmm?
Did you send it to all of us, that link?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on
There is a link
Oh, there it
there
is.
that they did
Oh, I
some
see now.
analysis, and there is, some comment there that could be interesting. The other thing I think, Bob, is that between the version original and version 2, I don't think the part with the FX3 has changed much. From what I understand, what they changed was the front end and the what's it called, the attenuator, that kind of part. But the part that connects the 2208 to the FX3, I think, is pretty much the same. I would be very surprised if they change that.
Well, yeah, it's probably the same. There are just a couple of, there's 4 leads that go from the USB connector over into the chip. And they go
Yeah.
under the chip pretty quick. So, and I'm
Yeah.
sure they go, we probably could figure out where they go. But the thing they did was they took off all the push buttons and a reset spot. And I don't see any sign of a 2 jumpers that you could set for bootloader. They probably got it configured for the bootloading method that they had planned on using for the
Yeah, I think this USB bootloader.
If it is, then that could be.
Yeah, I think USB, because from what I can tell, that's what happens. I never seen anyone doing anything else, SPI or anything else, but
Yeah, so the question is, can you bootload with the USB interface without having anything initially in the thing? Because it's not going to register when you connect to it, but it may work fine with that software development board. You might still be able to.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you can pretty much write your firmware. That's what I did. I played around with the firmware. You can change it. I did some little things to try out if you could run in master mode. So you can pretty much do anything else with there.
Yeah, so Cypress has the initial bootload routine too. I guess they probably seeded you to start with, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and actually it's so bad that they're using the same USB that Cypress uses for the streamer examples, which is a big no-no for Cypress because you're using their own USB. You should register USB with the USB Society, but they didn't care about that.
Right. So anyway, it may be possible to recover boards that fail by taking one of those boards and reloading the bootloader code and then reloading and letting it reloads the firmware on its own, I think, every time you run it. But and I'm reading the same current that thing you just posted shows. So there's not like a short in there pulling extra current. It could still have a gate that's shorted someplace inside the chip that's just not showing up, but I don't see that, and I doubt that that's the case.
So how would I use a developer board to reprogram, or do I need a development board? I can just do it via USB with the SDK to
you need that
flash
little
a new
SDK board, and there's several different versions of it. So we'd have to figure out, maybe Franco's already got one that's working and he knows which one to get. But
what's his name? Dave Whitten is your man for that, because I think he has a dev board and is familiar with them. I just know how the RX-88 works, but I don't have the board.
Michael, I do have them available.
Yeah, so then you just have to study their manual to see how you go about loading that code. It'll tell you the steps to follow, and then you need to find that binary file that's the bootloader program and feed it into the chip if it will work. And that if right away it's going to tell you that you're talking to it or not, and that's a big step right there. It tell you your parts are still functional. If it doesn't talk to it at all, then there's something else that we're dealing with here.
I mean, for instance, we can have a separate session, the 3 of us, to talk about that. I mean, I don't want to bore everybody with all the gory details, but yeah, pretty much that's what it is. Robin, since you're back, I was thinking that the Kiwi SDR actually uses CSDR written by Andras Herson in its core, right? Which is the same that is used also in OpenWebRX. So I was wondering if you could use that instead of asking John Simmons. I don't know what you think.
Well, he's added many. You hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. John has added many extensions and refinements to the WebSDR interface. So,
Okay.
So I think that, and those are the ones that some of which Phil described earlier, but there are a whole set of things like that. HD data link protocol, slow scan TV, CW decoder, all kinds of there's a Whisper decoder plugin, many extensions to the Kiwi that are not part of the WebSDR. So I don't know the structure of the WebSDR software, so I don't know how easy it would be to take. I mean, John's code is open source, so one could, in theory, go in and take his current user interface and inject, provide an alternative to talk to the K9Q interface.
Okay.
That would be a very elegant way, but I hesitate, John. You know, John Cooley wants to monetize his work, and I would hesitate to hijack his work and sell our RX888s instead of his. He's building the Kiwi 2 version 2 now, so he's on a path to try to make money from selling more Kiwi. So
I did a few years ago take Andrash's web interface and subvert it to my purposes by
you did.
Hmm?
You did, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I didn't do anything like what you all are talking about, but I was working on a project for the USGS tracking carp in the Mississippi River from a drone, and I used that with RTL SDRs, and I used his. It was very elaborate, but I it's really JavaScript code almost entirely, and it uses a lot of that may not be a favorite, but it's doable. I'll put it that way. I was working with Andrash's original.
Yeah. One of my Whisper Daemon collaborators, Uli, has communicated through Phil Harmon, who I think was here once, and Phil has encouraged, and apparently has John Meltorn, who is the author of the Linux version of HBSDR, I saw an email from him now 3 weeks ago that he had purchased and received a 888, and he was, I think, on the path to integrate his Linux version of HBSDR, integrated with the K9Q radio. So I think that my understanding, never having used HBSDR, but my understanding is it's quite a powerful package, and that integration would seem like a great addition to the ways to exploit this K9Q and RX888 environment. But I haven't heard of anything from John Harmon because John Melitor. I haven't seen any emails from him, so I don't know what progress and what his plans are, or even exactly functionally what he's going to end up with. Ideally, from my perspective, you would be able to run a SDR program anywhere and just point it at the public IP address of KPH, KFS, whatever, and then be able to receive, tune and receive anywhere you wanted, just as if you were physically located at the site. I don't think there's any technical reason that that couldn't be possible, but I'm not sure that's what John is aiming for. Hopefully he is, but I don't know that that's what what he intends to produce. Now you have
Well, the license file, Rob, that John put out says most of the code is GPL or MIT, so we can, do whatever. I mean, of course, we would release it.
Yes, well, I'm not saying absolutely. It's open source software. I know that John, understandably, took umbrage when some Chinese people came out with pseudo.
Yeah, I don't want you to lose a friend, though. That's what I'm saying.
I don't want to lose him because he really is.
Yeah.
He's done a tremendous amount of work. I had hoped that, that he could have, I mean, if I had been more, I hate to use the word aggressive, but more active in responding to him, I would have tried to persuade him that there has to be a way for him to get into the software only business and not be building new hardware. Because I don't, there's his Kiwi 2 design is already obsolete. It's not going to be an improvement over the a minor improvement over the Kiwi and nothing near like the performance of the AAA architecture. But I didn't have the energy to try to persuade him.
No, I understand.
And I respect him in his effort, so that I want to, I would not go forward to repurpose his software, just as I think he understandably was, as it turned out, the people who cloned his hardware made pretty terrible devices. I mean, the Fly Dog, I think, is an aptly named, and at least in English, perhaps in Chinese it comes off better than it does in English. But and then there's the Raspberry SDR, which I think had its own set of problems, but had some improvements at least, because it plugged into a Raspberry Pi rather than the BeagleBone. And one of the, John has ended up choosing the latest version of the BeagleBone, or the same version of the BeagleBone, for his Kiwi 2, which I think is a terrible a constraint on the. It just means that he's going to suffer from problems that the same problems that the Kiwi suffers from: lack of CPU power and all the limitations of using the FPGA as the processing engine. All of the issues are. One of the things that I learned in the last week that is I had thought that the AAA was not really usable with the Orange Pi, and I was stimulated to revisit that last week and set up my Orange Pi and plugged in the 888 and started looking into it a little more and discovered that really I don't know what it was about my previous failures to use it, but I can now use the Orange Pi very successfully with the 888. It's what I didn't appreciate is how much power, DC amperage, is being delivered to the Orange Pi. The Orange Pi itself, when it's using the 888, consumes about 2 amps at 5 volts. So it's 10 watts. And I didn't realize, I had an extension cord. I didn't realize that, that the 5 volts I was putting out on my bench power supply was 4.8 volts on the input of the 888 of the Orange Pi, and was 4.7 volts coming out of the Orange Pi going to the RX 888. So and I've had a number of encounters of problems with cabling problems and power supply problems with people who are using 888s with Whisper Daemon. So it turns out that the Orange Pi is perfectly viable, which suggests that the Pi 5 will be a perfectly viable platform to be connected to
Did you get a new kernel for it, Ron?
No. Standard. I didn't make any changes to the kernel.
Huh.
Use the standard kernel, but just by addressing the power supply issues, I seem to have addressed
Yeah.
problems that I was having before. In fact, seem to be derived from power supply issues, not from operating system issues.
Number one problem in all these small computers is power.
Well, and those media, it's MediaTek. Who is it makes the chips for the Orange Pi?
It's a Rockport. It's a
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That line of chips, other boards made with that are kind of notoriously sensitive to power. Um, I have some other ones, and they're,
Well,
you know,
you can't really blame the board if it's simply not getting the amount of power it requires.
no, I wouldn't blame it at all. It's just those other manufacturers actually insist you use their power supply because they get.
Well, I was looking through. I have what in the process I introduced the power meter on the input, the USB-C input of the Orange Pi, and I have a power meter on one of the USB-A outputs, and this allowed me to see what, of course, my bench supply. I'm running my bench supply at 5.36 volts, and I have a less than 1 foot long, I think, 16 gauge pigtail going to this, and I have 5.15 volts going through into the USB-C connector. So I'm losing 0.2 volts between the output of my power supply and the input.
Well, this is the problem with all these small computers that run on 5 volts. 5 volts is just too low.
It is too low.
Everybody wanted to use, ubiquitous 5-volt phone chargers, and it's just, not enough.
Yeah, well, I've ordered, and this the gauge of the USB, the power cables, the capabilities of the USB-C connectors, that you don't know how much resistance any of these introduce
Right.
into the whole thing. So
USB-C can be theoretically negotiated to higher voltages, but a lot of power supplies don't actually go that high.
Well, and of course, I looked into it. The Orange Pi only accepts 5 volts. So it could
USB-C is no advantage.
It hasn't gained anything from the USB-C advantage, except the fact that you can flip the connector upside down. But other than that, you don't gain any of the power management and negotiation advantages of USB-C, because if this thing were running at 12 volts, if you could supply at 12 volts to the connector, then you'd be in great shape. And I can't, I don't know. There's no spec for the Orange Pi about what voltage it accept, but the performance of this of the Orange Pi suggests that the Pi 5, which has 4 cores instead of the 8 cores of the Orange Pi, but the 4-core A76 of the Pi 5 ought to be a pretty good platform.
How big are the cache sizes? For me, that's extremely important.
I don't know. You'd have to look, Phil.
Just look at proc CPU info, and
yeah, I know it's there.
See it.
I mean, I could give it to you right now, but you could, if you want to experiment with it, it's sitting here. You can remotely log on to it, but it works just fine at 64 megasamples. It's completely reliable, and has been running for days. So so that means that for deployments of 888s, we can envision a package that consists of an Orange Pi or Pi 5 connected to a 888 class that consumes together on the order of 10 watts, 10 to 15 watts. I mean, what happens with Whisper Demon is there at the end of each 2-minute cycle, Whisper Demon fires up and runs the Whisper D decoders, and they consume 100% of the CPU for 30 seconds. So during that period, the power consumption jumps from 1.9 amps to 2.5 amps while all the cores are running. But for other applications like the grape-like applications, there's no need to be running the, you're not running Whisper D and consuming the CPUs. You're just recording IQ files and caching them. In which case, you're talking about a 10-watt receive system. And I'm considering putting one of these, such a system out in Maui, because I could do everything I'm doing with a 100-watt system out there. I can do on 10 to 15 watts and put the thing solar powered out in the middle of nowhere. So I think that would be a good goal for grape deployments, because that means you could put these things, these receive sites out in locations that don't have, power, 110 volt power supplies. And that's kind of one of my goals for myself, is to do that, both in Maui and also out at KPH, I think, or KFS rather, the site near me. I'm going to try to put up such a receive site. So there's the ability to run standard Linux on a ARM A76 is, to me, really raised the bar, the capabilities of the overall system. And I'd hope that that the Tangerine Chameleon project would end up with that as a kind of reference receive system, because you can do everything. You can listen to every whisper band, every time signal. All of that stuff can be done from a system that would be, you're talking about $100 for an Orange Pi. I don't know, what does a Pi 5 cost? What are they charging for a Pi 5?
It's less than 100. I don't remember. I ordered one.
Well, I got the one I just got. Only has 4 gig of RAM, but it is. It was, I think, $60 and came with a.
Okay, so you got $60 for a Pi 5, and Chameleon.
It came with a couple of cables.
Yeah, well, a Clementine for $150. You have a complete receive system. Complete receive system. That is multi-band. You could be, that to me that's the architecture that works for this project long term. That's what I would be envisioning. So anyway, that's an aside. For me, right now I'm working on trying to calibrate all this to make sure that that such a system delivers results, measurements that are accurate to 1 millihertz up on the 10 meter band. I haven't achieved that yet, but I'm working on my test setup. You can see behind me a stack of QDXs and beacon blasters and screens and so on. It's strange. It's I'm seeing offsets of on the order of hertz and spreading values that are 18 millihertz when I'd expect 9 millihertz and so on if I'm 10 meters. So that's the areas I'm trying to resolve so that we can actually start making Doppler measurements with the system that we can trust. Anyway, Franco's taken off, I think.
I might say 73 here because it's getting late for me as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, I will. I think an action item for me is to send an email to Richard and propose a Wednesday trip out to KPH, and then we can have a group of us. I'm sure the more people that are interested.
Yeah, that would be really nice.
And I think if you have a link to anything AGU related that you'd include that I should include in our email to Richard, that might incentivize him to host a weekday visit to KPH.
Yeah, I could certainly advertise it to the ham site people that are going
Mm-hmm.
to AGU. So
Okay. Well, I think we could. I will. I will mention you and include you specifically as the. And you really started this whole project and brought me in through your reaching out to KPH. I think 5 or 6 years ago. It was. I think in previous to the previous eclipse, right? So that was 2017.
yeah.
Must have been 2016 when you reached out.
Mm.
Now
Yeah, it's we're
amazing.
still going.
You're still going. Well, you wrote me into this whole thing. You know, that was the beginning of this whole whole adventure for me. So anyway, it's I think what we have running is really remarkable. I mean, the ability to use the 888 with and obtain all this information. I'm just a little frustrated that I haven't been able to get the information, the IQ files that we're gathering, and to get them into Bill Ingleby's the database.
I think that's going to be the big key.
And if you do that, then I'll fire up all of the Whisper Demon receive sites. Many of which are, the only ones that are useful are GPS disciplines. But
we should get. I mean, Bill's going to be at AGU, so he's another person. You can include him on the email too, and and he should definitely go to KPH as well.
Yeah. Okay. I'll include Bill. That would be a good opportunity to. But great. Okay, I'll include Bill in the dialogue. Good.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, I
Rob,
think
you said you had a spare 888 at KFS I could play with?
Yeah, there's a second 888 there. That was the one that I was using. I was going to use to record the full 30 megahertz spectrum.
Oh, and it's just idle now, not doing anything?
And it's sitting idle, doing nothing.
Oh, all right. Just well, you know where to get my SSH key. Just copy it over and send me the.
I'll send you the information.
Thank you.
This call and get you going. I haven't needed anything from you, Phil, because I think that, my issues are now, getting the test set up. I don't have any reason to think that your software is introducing any.
I'm actually starting to transmit again for the first time in years. I got a 7300, so of course I want to see if I'm getting out.
Well,
and I
am. Anyone's free to leave, but have you been following Glenn's investigations of the TRX Duo?
Of the what?
This is the TRX Duo or something. This is a clone of the Red Pitaya, which is a.
No, I'm always like behind on my email. Let's see.
Well, Glenn has been working on this and is very enthusiastic because it has a dual ADC input. Now, this is a Chinese guy is reclaiming 2208s and using them as part of a clone of the Red Pitaya, which is available for, I don't know, $225. And it has two 2208s that are clock synchronized as inputs and two 14-bit outputs that are also synchronized. And it works with a wide variety. All the software that works with the Red Pitaya works on this device, which includes HBSDR, all kinds of other things. The only problem with it, of course, is I don't see any way it can work with your software because it has only a gigabit Ethernet interface on it. The samples coming from the 2208 go into the FPGA. And I think it processes it in a way that's incompatible with the way you do your forward, right? They use a different decimation technique, I think, in their FPGA to obtain the 8 channels of receive channels that they get out of it.
Well, if the channels are wide enough and I can get at them in IQ format, I can further,
No, the channels are like 300 or 500 kilobits each. There's 8 500
kilohertz.
So it's.
Wait a minute, kilohertz, you mean?
I think it's kilobit per second. Glenn shared with me a architectural drawing, and
Oh, that's really slow.
I saw it's so they do it in the way they use the FPGA. I think doesn't means that most of the information that is thrown away in order to get the 8 channels, and I don't think the FPGAs include the
Yeah,
libraries.
see, that's why I've never been interested in these boards. I mean, I've been trying to show for years that you don't need FPGAs.
Well, even if it seemed to me that I had, maybe you could, of course, speak more authoritatively on this subject than I, but from what I inferred from the block diagrams that Glenn showed me, is the FPGA processing blocks are not the same as the ones you use in the K9Q radio library.
No, they're not. No, they're not. But
and as a result, that the processing that goes, the FPGA processing it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, everybody's just been doing decimation to get a single channel.
Yeah.
Conventional filtering, and my point was to show that fast convolution is much faster, so fast it can be done in software.
Yeah, well, my hope was that there was some way, there are some blocks inside the FPGA that would do fast convolution, and that then
well, it means doing an FFT, which is a non-trivial algorithm that would, I mean, I guess it could be done in an FPGA, but the point is, if you can do it in software fast enough, you don't need an FPGA.
Yeah. But the point was, okay, there's all of these guys with the FPGAs that did processing the 2208. If there were a way to reprogram the FPGA,
right, to just be
to do the
be a wire, yeah.
The main obstacle has been the moving the data from the A to D to the processor where you want to work.
I'm seeing this in the SETI world also. I go into a lot of their meetings, and it's all about getting the data around. It's not about processing it anymore.
But now all these single board computers are coming out with SERDES with exposed. They're doing away with the proprietary interfaces for video and USB, everything. And so, for instance, there's a Beagle board or Beagle Bone that recently came out that has 4. It's actually a RISC-V, and it has 4 lanes of PCI 3, at least PCI 3, and the trouble is still, getting from either LVDS or the local parallel interface, getting it into something you can put across a PCI bus, then you're home free. And it seems to me the real challenge is to get, if you can do that, you've got all these Thunderbolt and USB 4 things that are out here, and you've got all the bandwidth you could ever want, or at least, I don't know. It's going to take some serious thinking to come up with reasons to use more than you can do with.
Yeah, that is the problem. It's these bottleneck connectors is the big frustration. Yeah.
But the thing we have to be looking at is what's just over the hill, that might get us there. I mean, yes, this is great for now. It's really important we do this now. But I keep wondering, other than this particular USB 3 interface is really the only thing that's very usable for this job that doesn't use an FPGA. And it was designed just to do this because it was really designed to load data to an FPGA.
Right. Well, an FPGA is actually, if you can reprogram, is not terrible Because you could use one to decimate a fast A to D down to whatever pipe the board's got and max it out. You could do that.
Well, my thought was that if you could use the FPGA to do the Fourier transform you're doing in the front end, right, and get all of the 30 megahertz of bins, and then at that point you just select out the bins that are of interest that the listener wants to hear.
Yeah.
So if the FPGA could create those bins inside the FPGA, and then you then just hand off those bins that were of interest.
Well, I've been thinking about doing exactly the same thing in KNIQ radio by multicasting the frequency bands and spreading them across a bunch of multicast groups so that you subscribe to the ones you're interested in.
Yeah, well, that would be.
Problem is that the output. The problem is the output of the FFT is bigger than the input. That's the problem.
Yes, of course it is. Well, that's why I was suggesting if it happened inside the FPGA, if you don't need an FPGA, but there are a lot of devices out there with them, and if they were repurposable, okay, where you could where you could reprogram the FPGA to behave as the first stage of your software, okay?
Right.
Then once of course you create this huge amount of data, but you're only interested in a few of those bins, a small subset. If that selection process could happen inside the FPGA, then the output of that could go across the gig.
I understand. I mean, it could also convert back to the time domain and using a very small FPGA so that the bins are very wide, and then I could further process them.
Well, whatever.
And actually, given an FPGA's limited memory, it's probably more practical. I mean, I'm doing monstrous FFTs, and I'm still wondering whether I should.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I have been running my Ryzen 5 here at 128 megasamples, and the Ryzen 5 it consumes less than 20% of the CPU, and it's been running reliably for a week.
Oh, cool. At 128?
It's at 128. Yeah. So now I did put a fan on the top to cool the fins on the outer case, not inside the case, but on the outside. And with that, I have a muffin fan that I bought for $5 and plugs into USB ports. You blow that on the fins that are attached to the top of the 888, and the 888 runs, room cool. It's room temperature. So I think that the Ryzen, which I mentioned earlier, this Ryzen 5s seem to be completely have plenty of CPU capabilities to process the full sample bandwidth from the 888. And I think with the thermal changes that we've made, that it appears that the 888 is very reliable. Is running at a very reasonable temperature from what I can tell. I have of course, no way to measure inside. I don't know the chip temperatures inside the 888, but the evidence from the external heat of it is that it's very low. It's a little bit of fan on the outside, but even without the fan, it was certainly not the cooling fins weren't too hot to touch. They were warm, but not excessive. So I think that. I don't know. I'm hoping Dave is. I don't know did I miss any progress on PC boards from JLPCB? Is there progress on that front? Because I do think that we're running into uncertainties in the internal architecture of the 888. It would be lovely to be free of those uncertainties by having the real schematic.
Out of curiosity, Rob, how big is the level 3 cache in your Ryzen?
Hold on a second, and I'll find out.
Yeah, just look at proxy.
I think it's 8 megabytes.
8. Okay, so I'm still blowing out of that because I just noticed that some Ryzen CPUs, probably high end, has some pretty big caches, 32 and 64 megabytes. That gets interesting for me.
Well, there's of course different. It's the bringing up.
I really gotta say 73 now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good night.
See you, Nathaniel.
Good night. Bye, Phil. Bye, Rob. Bye, everyone.
Bye.